live. Welcome
We
to Take Your Career to the Next Level.
welcome. I am Naomi Margolis. I'm an engineering manager. I currently work at Microsoft on Excel Copilot, and I am passionate about supporting women and helping them advance in their careers.
And I am Jen Weigel. I run a program management team at Microsoft that's focused largely on developer education. And I'm just as passionate, which is how this all started.
Yes, it is. Yeah, we are so passionate that we started a series, and this is our third year in the series. And this series is about getting clear about what you want in your career and learning potentially new concepts to you to help you get there faster and easier. So, we're going to be looking at habits that you might not have intentionally chosen or even notice that you're doing, and providing options and alternatives for you to update or replace the habits if you'd like to. It's also about sharing ways to boost your career or presence that you might not know about. When Jen and I started the series, there was a lot that was new to me. And now I cannot imagine operating without that knowledge. It has helped my career, my confidence. It's helped how I show up in a stronger and much more authentic way. Truly, it's just made everything better.
I
So,
haven't I haven't even told you this yet, but I met someone in person this week at a random happy hour, and she said, "Oh, you're the lady from Take Your Career to the Next Level." She's like, "That helped me get confident and go ask my boss for a promotion." And she got promoted. So like cool success story
oh,
coming out of
God.
that this week. It really does. It does make a difference. I'm not saying for those of you who are joining us that we're guaranteeing you're going to get promoted, but this will definitely teach you some tactics and some very practical tips that you can take out of this to build your confidence and help you with whatever element that you may be working on from a growth perspective. So before we also jump in today's topic, Naomi, I do just want to let everybody know who's joining us live. If you haven't been here before, we do like to interact with the chat. So please drop comments in the chat. You can put questions in there. You can put aha moments in there. We will highlight some of them as we go, but please interact. We love the interactivity. It helps drive our energy. So with that, I will turn it over to you.
Yeah, I love that. And also, I know Jen said we're not guaranteeing that you won't get a promotion, but we're also really hoping this helps people get more promotions. To be honest, that would be an amazing outcome. So let's jump into today's topic. This is about shining a light on yourself and your work, claiming your achievements, even or especially if you don't feel comfortable doing so, and especially if you think you don't need to. And we may or may not get into why you have to do that. So, men are often the first to shout about their achievements. We know nothing's absolute here. So, when we say men, we don't mean every single man on the planet, just like we don't mean every single woman on the planet or every single person on the planet. But what is known is that women are often more reluctant. They very often deliver high quality work and then fail to take the credit that they deserve. To be seen as a team player, women tend to self sabotage by giving others credit for their achievements or including a team when it's a solo effort. We mistakenly assume that others will also do the same for us. Many worry that self promotion may seem obnoxious or off putting, but that's binary thinking. No one is either completely humble or completely obnoxious. Behavior falls on a spectrum. It can also be easy to default to the idea that the people skilled at getting noticed are showboats or braggers. We may congratulate ourselves on being less self centered than them, but that tendency is only going to leave us in the shadows. And breaking this habit involves going beyond claiming specific achievements to providing clarity at the leadership level about what your career ambitions are. So shine a light on what you do and what you aspire to do. And that's what we're going to be covering. Companies fail to address women's reluctancy because they have assumed what has served over the last several decades or longer, the male leadership template. So Microsoft's own CEO, Satya Nadella, made this very gap at the Grace Hopper conference in 2014 when he was a keynote speaker. And he said that women shouldn't worry, in response to a question, by the way, about raises, that women shouldn't worry about asking for raises and should instead rely on, and I'm quoting, good karma and trust that the system will eventually reward their work. He was quick to learn from this, and within 24 hours, had received enough feedback and issued a statement recognizing his mistake and his bias, which was based on his experience, which was different than many women. And as CEO, sure, it's very clear it was different. So we've seen signs that this is changing, but not enough and not fast enough. And of course, nothing is absolute. There may be cases where your work gets noticed without you having to claim that credit, but since this is an area you have control over, why leave it to chance?
Naomi, I want to break
So
in
if you,
here too.
yeah,
So just thinking about this, right? I think for many, many years, I would have heard him make that comment and would have been like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna
yep,
work hard and I'm gonna keep my head down. And as long as I'm
yep,
delivering, I will get recognized for it. And I think we would all love if that was the reality, regardless of our gender or our exact situation.
yeah,
But now that I've been in management for quite a few years, I also understand managers are busy. They don't see all of the things all of the time, and they're paying attention to a lot of other signals.
oh
So
yeah,
part of this is a mindset shift within each of us. And I think I finally realized, like, because I feel uncomfortable, I feel braggy, I feel obnoxious, like all of the things that you're talking about. It's a mindset shift though, where it's not that I'm being obnoxious or I'm being, braggy. I'm actually helping signal to my manager things they may not have been aware of. There's an
yes,
element of that. My manager and peers and some others, right? Just because we're all busy.
yeah,
So if you think about it from that perspective, I'm actually helping them out, especially if I do this in a way that
yes,
feels authentic to me. I'm helping
yeah,
them by bringing to light some of the things that I'm doing. Because the other thing is not only is it great for your own achievements, but your manager gets to claim success for their team.
yeah.
So there's an element here.
Everybody
Just so part of this is the mindset shift.
Yeah, Jen, I love that. We're gonna get kind of repeat that later on too, because one, I don't feel like we can say it enough. But two, the other thing is, since you mentioned that, I was in a meeting sometime in the last few years where someone said, not to me and not about me, isn't it your manager's job to know what you are doing? And as a manager, I have to tell you, that plus so much more. And so making it easier for your manager to know what you are doing helps them. Honestly, they're human too. They're doing their job too. And I promise their job is not solely knowing what your job is. So yeah, great point, Jen. Thank you. Yeah. So if you struggle to claim achievement, to claim credit for your achievements, it is very likely to cost you throughout your career. I'm not saying this means this is why you're not a CEO, but it's certainly impacting what level you get to and at what is the word that I'm looking for this morning, Jen, that I am not speed. It's not speed, but I'm going to use the word speed.
Maybe
Um,
velocity, maybe.
velocity. Thank you. Yeah. So the cost will be highest and most visible when you're trying to move to the next level or seeking a new job. I'm currently running the hiring for my org, and the ratio of women who use we statements in the interviews versus men who use I statements to describe their accomplishments is noticeable. I find myself asking follow up questions to figure out what exactly they did as part of the we because it's not clear. And if you get a hiring manager who doesn't really care or notice, that could really impact you.
It's interesting because I think you were telling me a story about some of this because I know you've been doing a lot of screening and a lot of these conversations and how you had a really strong candidate who kept saying we and you were willing to keep probing to
Mhm.
say no, but what did you do, what part of that we, and then when you get into it you find that it's actually a lot more I, but we tend to give credit, right? But to your
Yeah.
point, not every hiring manager is going to take the time to do that. So again, if we can have kind of that mindset shift ourselves, it will help us in these conversations.
Yeah, it's genuinely helpful. I would not consider it someone bragging, especially during an interview when you are sharing about yourself, your interests, your passions, your achievements. It's also it's a really useful muscle to start building. And that's why we would encourage you to start building it today. We'll be asking specific questions towards the end. And what we want to encourage you to think about is what can you do today to start building that muscle, to start shifting your way of thinking and speaking. And speaking up about what you contribute and detailing why you're qualified. Again, this does not make you self centered or self serving. It makes you an advocate for yourself, and it helps the other person get to know you and your work better.
It sends that signal, just like I was saying too. There's an element here too, like if my team members are helping me understand what they're doing and helping me promote their achievements because they're keeping me aware, it also sends a signal to me of like they're already thinking about the next level, and I start to see them in a little bit different light. So, and I think that's true no matter what level you may be at in your career.
Yeah, that is so true. And yeah, expecting others to notice your contributions or believing that they should, it's not only likely to keep you stuck, but it can also impact how much satisfaction you're getting in a job that you might otherwise enjoy. If you're waiting to be acknowledged by your busy manager or by people who aren't aware of what you do, if you're not getting the praise you hope for or even think you deserve, you might feel unappreciated, under-acknowledged. You might start to resent not only your manager or leadership chain, who all seem unaware of all this hard work you do, but colleagues who are more skilled at getting noticed. And if you're giving others credit, this resentment can increase exponentially.
Oh, and the resentment can be real. I mean, I know I felt it at points in my career where I'm like, well, I keep telling so and so how amazing they're doing, and I share like, oh, so did you know that Jane did this thing the other day, or did you know that Bob, but then no one was saying, well, what about what Jen's doing? And then you start to seethe,
You're like,
and it
but what?
underlies. I know,
Yeah.
I know.
There's this great line from the Muppets where Miss Piggy says, "But what about moi?" And I feel like that is yes. Um, I'm sure we all know the Muppets, by the way, and are a fan of Miss Piggy, who is very good at self-advocating. Um, yes. So think of it this way. Companies don't just make great products and assume that customers should want to buy them or hope that they do. They have a marketing function that is designed to effectively, well, presumably effectively, but they hope effectively promote what they do. You as a professional can use one too. It's about doing the work and effectively communicating it. And you can do so in a way that's authentic to you and your professional growth. So in this case, that means claiming your accomplishments so you get the recognition for them. One of the easiest hacks is to pretend you're about to talk or write about someone you admire. That's my favorite actually, because it's so much easier for me to talk about someone and how amazing they are. And then when it comes to me, all of those adjectives just go out the window. And I'm like, well, I show up instead of like, oh, Jen is amazing. Here is what Jen does. I could talk about Jen and how amazing she is all day, and it would be effortless for me. But I would not say that about myself. So having that pro tip that we just posted, having that be how you apply the framework to your own work and using that lens, take a new look at the things that you do because you're probably underselling yourself. You may not think of what you've achieved as being noteworthy, especially if it's your superpower and comes easily to you and you think, well, that was so easy. I'm just not going to mention it.
That I want to highlight two things here. One, I love this tip because it's a variation of the, what advice would you give a friend in this situation, and then turn that advice back on yourself, because it's always easier to give others advice than ourselves advice. So I
Yes.
think it's very similar of, how would I praise someone else, or how would I bring light to their acknowledgments, and how do I
Yeah.
turn that view back on myself? I think there's that. The other piece about the superpower is really interesting. And this is where having some other people's perspectives can help you too. You may take your superpower for granted because it's just so easy for you and you
Mhm.
don't recognize that. And I say
Yeah.
this because I didn't realize that one of my superpowers was a superpower. I just thought it was something everybody did. And it wasn't until someone pointed that out that I was like, oh. And it made me recognize then that, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit because we're going to get into the product positioning idea, right? Like companies have promote products. Knowing your superpower helps you know you as kind of like a product and how you
Yeah.
promote that. So
Yeah.
this is all interconnected here.
Yeah. Yeah. Very intertwined. Yeah. And if you still need convincing, going back to what Jen mentioned earlier, as a manager, it makes my job easier, full stop. Having people who are telling me about what they did and telling me, and it's not that they show up and say, here's what I did, and I did a great job of it. And I'm like, oh, great, make a note. Okay. Like it's more about here's what I did, and I've got insight into the project, and I can take a look at I can look at the code reviews. I can look at the prototypes. I can look at what's in the various rings since I work in software that does tend to be my focus. I'm able to look at it. It helps me direct my focus and know where to look and what to look. There's so much more too. It's so helpful to me to get insight into what my reports are working on, but then it also makes it easier to give them direct feedback and suggestions based on what I know of their work, based on what I see, and then based also on the company's priorities. Because as a manager, I'm thinking about how does their work ladder up and align, which they may not always be thinking about. So it helps me make sure that it's aligned. It helps me better set them up for success and growth. It gives managers a chance to look for opportunities that fit their abilities and ambitions. And as a manager, it's something I'm always thinking about. And not having insight into someone's ambitions and abilities decreases the chances of helping them grow, helping make their ambitions come true. Jen, I know you feel strongly about this
It's
too.
I do. I mean, so there's two things that I want to touch on with this piece too is the first piece, you sharing what you've done with me may help me think about the story that I want to tell about the work that we're doing a little bit differently, right? So like your piece of a project may have only been one little thing, but that's going to cause me to go, well, wait a second, where are we? Oh, we just deflected support costs of $2 million because of that project, and you played a key role. Now I can tell that larger success story. And I know that you played a role in it. And that's something too, believe it or not, when we have these conversations behind closed doors, so to speak, like those are things that come up. So it does. Anything, I want to underscore that it can make your manager's job easier. And
Yeah.
anytime you can make your manager's job easier, it's a win.
Yeah.
It's a win, right? But again, it goes to finding just the right balance to do it. Because if you come in and you tell me something and I don't trust the receipts because of the way that you presented it, so find the balance that you're comfortable with that also, will help reflect that. That was the one thing I would say. The second thing about knowing broad ambitions, actually, perfect story. Just in the last 2 weeks, there's an individual within my organization who I know we're underutilizing their strengths in the particular role that they're in, but we haven't hit on an opportunity that would be just right. And I was in a meeting just, I guess it was like 3 weeks ago, where someone else in the org was talking about, okay, well, I really have this need. I know we don't have headcount, but like, this is one of the things I want to get funded as we do this. And immediately it was like, wait a second. What this gap we have, I have someone on my team who could fill it. Well, we just announced yesterday that they're going to be moving into this brand new role on the team because it's filling a gap for the
Perfect.
business. And I would not have known
Yeah.
that if I didn't understand that individual's strengths and some of their desires. So, and I'm not saying it's their
Yeah.
dream job. This was not, we didn't tailor the position for them, but I was able to connect a couple of dots because I knew that.
Yeah. I get feedback from my team of, oh, hey, this project's really a perfect fit for me. And I don't actually respond, I know, but I do because I think about it. And that's how they ended up getting on the project. So being able to match people, again, to Jen's point, it's not about creating jobs or roles that are specific for them. It's about having a sense of that landscape and being able to fit people where they're going to be really excited about the job, where their skills are a great fit so that it's going to have an ease for them to excel. Those are the things. And then Jen, I want to jump back because you mentioned something about that balance of when people show up with, you know, like, hey, this is what I did, and aren't I walking on water? I wasn't going to mention this, but I did have someone in the interviews show up, and he was telling me about all that he did, and he was using I statements. And knowing his current level and knowing the sort of project that he described, I also drilled in there and said, hey, which part of that was you? And it turned out almost nothing. Like, what he was claiming credit for was so different from what he actually contributed to the project. So I call that out to say, like, both sides exist. And to Jen's point of balance. Yeah.
It's be realistic. Most people, I will say, have a pretty decent BS meter, so to speak, right? I mean, so there is, and here's the thing, there's nothing wrong with you going in an interview and saying, okay, in this situation, we saved the company $2 million, but then
Yes.
being very clear of this was my role in it. And because
Yeah.
a lot of
And
times
don't underplay your role in
no,
it.
and that's what I was gonna say. A lot of times, and we may be reluctant because we may be like, well, all I really did was drive. Well, as a program manager, right? All I really did was drive collaboration, which sounds like anybody can do that, but actually anybody can't. There's a reason program manager roles exist because if it was easy for everybody to just collaborate all of the time,
Yeah.
we wouldn't need us. But that's not true. So I think it's understanding, and some of this might go back to your superpower a little bit too. But it's understanding
Yeah.
the value that you bring. So yeah, I didn't personally save the company $2 million, but I played a key role on that project because I made sure that we were connecting the dots and bringing people together, and it allowed us to actually ship the thing that then saved us $2 million, or whatever the case might be. So it's finding that balance and not underestimating yourself, but also
Yeah.
not over inflating what you did, because the receipts will catch you.
Yeah. Although I do want to say, I do feel if you're watching this video that the likelihood that you're going to overinflate yourself is very minimal. So please don't over-index on that one. Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting because I think the story that you just told us, if I heard correctly, it was he said, and I hate to make it sound like it falls into gender roles, but there is an element here. I mean, it goes right back to the story you told about Satya. His
Yeah.
experience was very different than the experience of women, and it's just a reality of the world that we live in.
Yeah. Yeah. Put it to Jen's earlier comment about putting your head down and working hard. It's only part of it. The working hard is the important part. And of equal value is making sure that people know your work. If you are interested in having a career where you continue to get promoted and progress, hiding your work, not claiming your achievements, just it can slow you down. It can stop you. And that actually is why we keep reiterating the need to market yourself, the need to claim your achievements. And you're thinking, but isn't it enough that you work hard and well? And from this conversation, what I'm going to say, no. And I found this to be true from personal experience. Jen, when you were talking about saving the company $2 million, I was in the back of my mind, I went straight to the time that I did save the org that I was working in, and I can't remember if it was $1 or $2 million. And I put it on my end of year review, and my manager didn't read my end of year review, and I hadn't told him about this. And you would kind of think that, especially because I was much earlier in my career, that would perhaps result in a promotion, perhaps result in a bigger bonus. It did neither. So I do feel pretty personally about how important this is. And I've heard from many other women that I've known over the years. Your great work does not always lead to rewards or recognition. And while you may not have control over your next promotion, you do have control over letting your manager or your management chain or your potential next manager know about the great work that you're doing. And since that is one area we have control over, it's partly why it's our focus today. Yeah. So what do we do about it? How do we frame that? we're going to talk about the 5 P's of personal brand reputation. Personal brand or reputation. So, you may read the word brand. I just want to assure people, if you're cringing at the word brand or the idea of having to build a brand, I get that. What I'd like you to consider is another framework, which is your reputation. The way you show up, the way you contribute, the way you treat your teammates, whether you do what you say you're going to do, all of those contribute to your reputation. And in this case, your reputation leads the way for how people think about you or talk about you or even recommend you. So we've got these 5 P's. We've got product, and that's your accountability, your abilities, like your technical or functional skills, your integrity. It's the what of the job, what you come to deliver in your role at work every day. Your persona is your ability to create a vision or influence others or get people to want to work with, for, around you. It's how you grow and develop. And so this is the how of the job. And I want to preemptively tackle potential negative reactions to the word influence, thinking about how instead of it being manipulative, it can be about you sharing your enthusiasm and energy. And I heard this line the other week that energy is currency, and I couldn't agree more. So think about less about manipulative and more about, are you enthusiastic? That is often extremely influential. Jen, you look like you want to
I
add in
know.
there.
I'm like, I've never heard that before. And that just
So
kind of
good,
smacked
right?
me. Like your energy is your currency. I'm
Yeah,
I'm gonna be
spend it
thinking about that
better.
one for a while now. I really like that.
Yeah, spend it a lot better is what I said to myself when I learned that. Um, Package, how you look, how you talk. And yes, we know there are going to be areas in your package that you will have more control over, of course. So here we're encouraging you to be thoughtful and intentional about how you show up. And then promotion, that's about who knows about you and what do they know. This ties back to your reputation. This is where your work creates the base that you build from. And the sponsorship program that I put together, I have a slide and it says, that phrase, dance like no one is watching, work like someone is watching. Just always work like someone is watching, not watching you as you type on your keyboard so much as what if someone were looking over your shoulder at the work, at your output, that's what you want to think about there. And then last, posture. It is not just about having a straight spine. Although if folks have noticed, I keep reminding myself to have a better posture during this event. Although body language can certainly help. This is about your willingness or ability to engage in self-advocating behavior, not waiting for someone else to say you're ready, not waiting for someone to give you permission. This, at the core, is grounded in belief that you can lead from any role anywhere.
I wanna connect a few dots myself here really quickly. The last session we did on presence was we spent a lot of time talking about body language and the mind body connection. And I think it all ties here because a big part of that is your actual posture trigger signals in your brain that drive your confidence, right? So even if you are like, oh, I'm just generally not a super confident person, or I'm not sure if I'm ready to lead yet, you can use physical posture to actually trigger those feelings in your brain so that you do show up with the confidence to lead. You do show up with that presence and the ability to lead in that moment. So I want to tie that together because I think posture is it's bigger than just the physical posture, but that's an element of it.
Yeah. One other thing I noticed, and I wish I'd learned or noticed this so many years ago, is that when I trust myself to show up in an authentic way and I trust my abilities, what it translates into is me being able to have an opinion, propose a new idea, show up in a different way instead of this very passive, hoping that other people will do the right thing. And I do feel like that's part of that sense of self-advocating behavior. It doesn't have to look like you marching through with, a bullhorn telling people what your abilities are. Sometimes it's just about showing up, even if you're a quiet person, which I often am in meetings, showing up as your quiet self with that sense of purpose, posture, presence.
The quiet self piece too is, I want to underscore that. I was actually just in a conversation with someone this morning who said sometimes the people that are most soft spoken, because they don't speak up very often, when they do speak up, I really listen.
Yeah.
So there's an element there too of, you don't have to be bold and brash, or, I mean, this goes back to what's authentic for you, right? Because
Yeah.
we are not telling you have to be an extrovert to get ahead.
No.
You have, believe it or not, I am not an extrovert.
What?
We're not telling you that. It's finding the balance for yourself, what feels authentic to you. And so that, I think, is true of all of the 5 Ps, right? But especially when you're talking about the package and the promotion piece. Don't feel like you have to be something that you're not. Channel the thing that you are into a
Yeah.
way that will make it very clear how you're showing up, who knows about you. Be deliberate. I think maybe that's the bigger thing, is just be very
Yes.
deliberate.
Yeah. I'll share too that the last round of interviews I did to get my last role, I was I was feeling a little bit like, let's see what happens, which tends to relax me. And one of the questions, because I feel like the stakes are lower, and one of the questions that I got from one of the interviewers, who, by the way, had great questions, he said, what's something that people might perceive as a weakness, but that you perceive as a strength?
Ooh.
And right, good question. And
Mhm.
again, because I was just feeling the stakes were low, which gave me confidence, which gave me a feeling of, yeah, it's okay if I show up as my authentic self. And I said, people may presume because I listen when I start a new job, I'm very intent on listening and asking questions instead of showing up and saying, this is how to do it and this is what we're going to do. They might interpret that as a weakness. And I don't think it is. I think it gives me a much better grounding to build on, and that I think I can be more effective. And there were 3 openings at the time, and they gave me first pick of which openings I wanted. So of the people, and hundreds of people applied for this. This was one of those, when I look back, I kind of can't believe it all worked out so well for me. But hundreds of people applied for these 3 open positions, and out of all of those people, not only did I get the interview, but then I got the job offer, and I was given the first choice. So, and I got feedback that it was one of that my answer about listening, which is a very quiet skill and is probably one of my superpowers, because again, I'm like, but doesn't everyone? Um, so yeah.
And it goes back to knowing your superpowers too. I mean, it really does, because um, that's how you bring yourself to, you know, I mean, it's part of your package. It's part of your superpower can be part of your persona too, how you do the job, because it just may be something that's natural to you. If you do it
Yeah.
by doing a lot of listening, that is just part of your innate persona. And it all leads to the product when you think about, what you deliver in your job.
Yeah. It's so true. So, Jen, which of these P's are you currently most challenged by or working on?
This is a great question. So actually, um, for me right now, it's the package one, and it's because I just recently moved to a new leadership team, and so I've got new peers around me. I've been cast in this new, um, kind of this new position, and I'm trying to reconcile, how am I showing up now as a leader at a different level?
Mhm.
And there's definitely some things that are just very natural to me, but there's things as I'm learning my new role that aren't necessarily. And so I'm trying to be super conscious of the tone, the body language, appearance, because especially as you move up in leadership, what can happen very quickly is you make an offhand comment, not thinking about it, and it goes and spins up a bunch of work that you never intended. But because you're a leader, you're just seen as having that level of authority. So it makes me even more conscious that I have to be very careful about the things that I'm saying, because I don't want to send that inadvertent signal or cause a bunch of chaos and churn in the organization, right? Just because I made an offhanded comment of like, oh, that would be cool if we could do something like that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
What about you?
I think right now I'm working on persona, and it's in part because there's so much there's so much change going on in the current projects that my team is working on, that I'm working on the creating a vision and then ensuring that I'm able to influence others, and that people, and then getting that buy-in where people want to work on these and with me, and for me. So I think this really is trying to figure that out to make sure it's landing in the way that I hope it does land.
Are you being super conscious about your energy and how your energy is coming across as you talk about the work? I'm drawing back to your currency your
Yeah.
currency comment earlier. So I'm just wondering, like, are you, as you're thinking about how you do the job, are you thinking about how your energy feels and how that's showing up to others?
I think that's a really good question. Part of me doesn't want to answer you because it's a really vulnerable answer, but I'll just go ahead and say I haven't thought about it. And as soon as you asked, I was horrified because now I I I think I have been going into debt a lot with my energy currency. And I think it would serve me better if I'm intentional about where I'm spending it versus just feeling like the bank is always going to be lending at, because I can already tell, especially at the end of a long day, that that the bank is like, you know what? We're increasing the interest rate that we're gonna charge you on this. And I'm like, oh no, that sucks. And then the next day I'm like, I forgot about that. I'm just gonna spend, spend, spend.
I think
So
it's a great, I thank you for being vulnerable. I did not mean to put you on the spot like that because I know we haven't
please
really
do.
talked about this. But I think it's a good reminder for us all, because I know I certainly have been feeling a lot of pressure lately to just do. Like there's just so much stuff going on. And it can be really easy to fall into that energy debt. And to
Yeah.
your point, yep, by the end of the day, it's not there. But I wake up
New
the next morning and
APR.
I just assume the bank is refilled. And that's not always the case, right? I mean, you're still drawing. So it's interesting because there's an element here too of, your personal brand or reputation. You can't show up as who you want to be if you're depleted on the
Yeah.
back end, right? Or you can only show up for as long, you can only, I don't know what the right way to phrase that is, right? But like you can only do it for so long
Yeah.
before that will catch up with you.
Yeah.
So being more deliberate, I think, is a good reminder, well, for both of us, and hopefully for some of the folks that are listening right now too. How am I using my energy? Is this a wise use? So
Yeah. I think if you take two things from today, one is thinking about how you're going to speak about your work, but the other is how are you spending your energy? Which I know was not the topic of today, but when I heard it on the podcast the other day, it honestly just blew my mind.
I think it ties very directly though to how
Yeah.
are you going to speak about your work, because that's the other thing is if you were like, oh, well, speaking about my work actually seems like an energy depleter,
Yeah.
that, or it would drain my energy to even thinking about that, then I would start to question too of, is it the right work? And part of the reason I'm saying that is because I think for people that are excited about a lot of the work they're doing, the energy just becomes higher, or at least it comes across as high energy. You see some of that
Yeah.
passion in what they're doing. And I think that also means that it becomes easier for them to talk about what they're doing and
Yeah.
claim some of those achievements in just a very natural way. Or maybe they don't even realize that they're doing it, you
Yeah.
know? So I think that's interesting because I feel like sorry, I'm having an aha moment as we're chatting. Like,
No, I
uh,
love it.
I feel like there's a tie here because
Yeah. Yeah.
If I'm really reluctant to talk about my achievements and I'm like, oh, it's going to take me more time, and it's like it's a burden, then maybe I'm not working on the right things either. Because if I do it in the right way, in theory, talking about some of the really cool things that I'm doing and the results that I'm driving should actually give me energy.
Yeah. And for anyone who's listening and thinking, wait a second, it feels like an energy drain, but I think I'm in the right job, or this is the right job for what I need right now. Ask yourself too, does it feel draining or does it feel scary? Because if it feels scary, you do want to check in with yourself and say, what authentically can I start thinking about, start building that muscle? How would you describe it to your best friend if you were having coffee or tea and telling her about the amazing work that you did? Presumably, you'd have some degree of pride or confidence or um, some degree of energy in sharing that. So don't have an internal sinking when you hear this conversation so much as say to yourself, what are different ways to frame this? And is one of the reasons that I'm not doing it out of fear?
I love that call out, because I think there's the fear, the reluctance. The other thing that, as you were just talking, I was thinking about, reframe it from a I have to. I
Oh,
have to talk based on everything that they just said. I have to talk about my work now, to I get to talk about my work. It's an
yes.
opportunity,
Yeah.
not a burden.
Yeah.
And sometimes that shift can also help you. So yeah, is it fear that's holding you back? Is it feeling like it's a burden? Because you may be in the right role. So think about how claiming your achievements can actually help you drive more of that energy and that excitement. And then all of the other things we talked about that are obviously elements of that, it signals that you're ready for the next level. It signals that um that you're valuable. I can't even remember now all the things we talked about. We covered a lot of stuff.
It's all good. It's goodness, goodness, goodness.
It
It's
is.
good.
It
Yes.
is. It makes your manager's job easier. How did I forget that part?
Yes. Yeah. That is the thing. I mean, it's not just about you. It's about you. It's about helping out at work. It's helping your manager. Perhaps it's creating a role model for people, for women who work around you. Perhaps it's creating a role model for your daughter. There's so many different ways that people win by you sharing your accomplishments. Like so many. And one other thing too. So we'd love to say if you're watching this video, post on LinkedIn. Like, we would love to know after hearing this, what is one thing you're going to do to take the credit you deserve? Like, how is that going to show up for you? Of these 5 P's that we've been talking about, which one which one feels the most challenging to you? Which one are you going to work on first? Which one are you going to do today? And that is the thing that we would love people to think about. Take this away and try, even if it's something really that feels like a baby step, or you think, well, that's not big enough, start somewhere.
And if you're willing, anybody who's watching live, if you're willing to share that in the chat, the one thing you're gonna do, great. Otherwise, if you're watching the recording, don't just think about what you're gonna do. Do it. Go do it. Just take this one
Yeah.
little step. One little
Yeah.
step to take credit you deserve. And even if that is going and having the conversation with your boss to say, hey, by the way, did you know that I'm working on this really cool thing? And this is the results or the impact that it's driving? You know,
Yeah.
just having that
Or
conversation as
something.
a starting point.
Yeah. Something like, hey, here's the project, and I'm super psyched because we delivered on time. And here's what I did to help us do that. Something like that. Again, ask yourself, like, where do you want to grow? Where do you want to go? That's what we hope we can help you on your way to that.
I want to underscore something you just said too of we delivered on time and I helped with that. That's not always true. But I think here's the thing, and that's where I want to say this before we wrap, because I don't want people to go, well, there's no success stories to tell. We
Oh,
didn't
yeah.
deliver on time, but you know what? We learned from this, or this is
Yeah.
going to change the way that we're going to do something going forward, or we actually discovered a really critical risk that we're mitigating, and that's why we're not delivering on time. But now we're going to deliver with a higher quality. So there's
Yeah.
there's more to a story than just I saved a company $2 million, or I was on a project that did. There's more than we delivered on time. So I want you to encourage folks to think about that too. Claiming achievements can be a lot of different types of stories. It's not always a success story. It could be, yeah, we failed, but guess what? We learned from this. And this is what we learned. And this is how we're putting that into effect in the next project or the next piece of work. So I don't want people to walk away going, well, I haven't done anything good lately.
Yeah, it's so true, Jen. I love that example. And especially to think iteratively, think incrementally, think what are the things that you're doing? You don't have to wait till the end of a project. You can talk about your learning on the way. You can talk about your milestones on the way. These are the things that are really helpful to your manager. If you're having an imposter syndrome day where you think, I've done nothing, honestly, you have. And so looking at the things that you've done and figuring out a way to speak to them. And if you feel like you haven't done anything, maybe shift that to, ooh, that means it must be something small, which is going to be easier for me to talk to. Let me think about which one that is. Like, there are all these different ways to shift. And we just encourage you to think about the great work that you're doing so that you're able to speak to it. Yeah. Or write to it too, if you want to send an email or a Teams chat.
Whatever's more comfortable for you, but don't stop to recognize it for yourself first.
Yeah.
And then think about, how do I share this?
Yeah. Yeah. Great.
With that, yeah, we haven't gotten any comments on the chat. I was looking to see if there was anything, but we haven't, which is okay. People can be listening in and not quite willing to share yet. That's fine. Yeah. But please do, like, really, really think about, what is your takeaway? What's the action you're going to take based on listening to this video? Because that's what moves us forward as individuals from a growth perspective. So,
yeah. Great.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody who joined us. And for those of you that are watching the recording later, you can always find us on LinkedIn. If you do have any feedback or comments or aha moments that you want to share later, we'd love to hear them. We do read all of the posts that we get there. And we also use it as we think about future topics. So thanks for joining.